confronted the new coworker for constantly trying to change our office environment. She called it bullying and threatened to report me to our. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I've been at my current office for 3 years. A few weeks ago, we hired a new girl. She's 25, and she started sitting diagonally in front of me, about a meter apart, so we can both see each other at our desks. From the moment she arrived, she jumped right into trying to change how we do things around here. At first, it was my eating habits. I admit I snack more than I should. Cakes, ice cream, bread, you name it. She joked a couple times about how I tempted her with food and wondered how I could stay skinny eating like a pig. I offered to share, but she refused because she's trying to lose weight. I figured, fine, I'd just stop snacking at my desk, out of respect. But then she took it further. At the end of her first week, she actually reported to HR that having lunch at our desks might be unhygienic and that crumbs could attract bugs. She even said she was annoyed by my eating and that it disturbed her, especially since she was trying to lose weight. HR sent out a formal email banning all desk eating. Now everyone in the office, literally everyone, can't eat at their desk because of her complaint. Then came her issue with Jane, the woman who sits right next to her. On her second day, she complained that Jane's perfume was too strong and made her nauseated. To be honest, Jane does like her perfume, but none of us ever had a problem, until the new girl insisted Jane had to change just to accommodate her. It didn't stop there. The 6 of us on the team have a tradition. Each week, we each put in $10 to buy lottery tickets. One guy in our group is Muslim and doesn't gamble, but he happily lets us be and never criticizes. We invited the new girl to join, and she let us know just how unprofessional she thought it was. Not only that, she brought it up with HR, arguing that if we won and quit, it could supposedly damage the company. Thankfully, HR ignored this one. She also went after our Muslim teammate. He prays twice a day in the stationary room since we don't have a prayer room in the office. He's got his prayer mat stored there. It's been that way since I started working here. She told another teammate that the mat was not pleasant to look at and pushed for him to move his things to another spot, because, as she put it, personal belongings don't belong in a common area. But today was just too much. Our desks are arranged in an L shape, and mine is beside a glass window. 7 of us, not including her, prefer to keep the shades down because the glare makes it impossible to see our screens, especially in the afternoon. We all hate sitting in the sun. She started complaining that the corner is too dark, it has bad vibes, and insisted we should open up the blinds because sunlight boosts moods and productivity. After hearing her push for yet another change, I just couldn't hold back anymore. I stood up and said, not shouting, look, you've been here less than a month, but you're constantly telling us what to do and expecting us to change our habits for you. We've already made so many adjustments to accommodate you, but you keep pushing for more. You can't keep telling us what to do. Maybe it would be better for you to move and sit where the HR team is, since it's always bright there, and honestly, you seem closer to them than any of us anyway. Right away, she accused me of hating women, said I was bullying her, and threatened to take this all to our manager and HR. Now I'm wondering, am I in the wrong here? Was I a bully? Should a new hire really be allowed to tell longtime colleagues how to do everything? Update 1. I just had an interesting conversation with my colleague who works downstairs in the storage room, a place I rarely visit myself, but the new girl goes there every day as part of her job. He shared a story that really caught my attention. At my company, we employ a guy with Down syndrome who helps with restocking. Let's call him Bob. Just a couple of days ago, one of the older ladies from the kitchen came in wearing a bright Pikachu apron. When Bob saw her, he immediately shouted, "Pikachu!" and ran over, excitedly touching the apron, which meant he accidentally touched her breast in the process. According to my colleague, the kitchen lady just laughed it off, not seeming upset at all. The new girl happened to witness the whole thing, and she was furious. She insisted Bob had sexually harassed the older lady and announced she would be reporting him to HR. She's convinced that Bob's behavior is highly inappropriate and unsafe. Update 2. I wanted to clarify a few things and respond to some questions and comments I received after everything started unfolding with our new colleague. It turns out I've learned quite a bit about workplace etiquette and the things people from different cultures find normal, or not, just from this situation. For starters, I didn't realize it wasn't appropriate to refer to a 25-year-old as a girl. Now I know. Thanks to my colleagues for pointing that out. Let me lay out what really happened, and give more context. There's a lot I didn't mention, mostly because I didn't think it would be interesting, or in some cases, it actually worked in our favor. First, apparently, wearing perfume at work is a no-go, even though Jane's been wearing it for years and no one's ever complained before. That was news to me. There was also her comment about the Muslim colleague's prayer mat. Her issue wasn't so much about the religion, but the way the mat was placed in the storage room. Everything else is perfectly arranged in wooden cupboards, but in one corner, there's a little table with a prayer mat and some religious items. She felt it looked out of place and thought personal items shouldn't be in public areas. That mat, though, has been in the same place since I started, and no one has had a problem with it in 3 years. Then there were the skinny or eats like a pig jokes that get tossed my way. Honestly, I don't mind. It's part of our office banter, and I'm literally the only one who ever gets body shamed. No one comments on others' bodies or eating habits, and nobody actually feels bad or is being picked on. On the topic of eating at desks, there was no HR policy against it, and no complaints until now. It's common in our team and even in IT. Her main complaint? She's trying to lose weight and doesn't like watching people eat, not allergies or food smells. She never mentioned concerns about computer damage or bugs until she escalated to HR. Right now, she's on a 6-month probation period. This is actually her second job. She worked 2 years at her last company in a different city and always has great things to say about that place. One thing I didn't mention earlier, one of my colleagues wanted this included. On her second day, she asked our manager to move a cabinet closer to her desk. The cabinet used to be on the other side of the room, so I used to have to walk over every time I needed something. Now it's much more convenient for me, but the people who used to sit near it are annoyed. They use it just as often as she does. She never mentioned any mobility issues, she just wanted it near her, and, funny enough, our manager went ahead and moved it for her. She also complained that the IT guy who sits behind her has a really loud ringtone. I admit, I find it a bit annoying too, but he doesn't get many calls and it's honestly not that big of a deal for us. Another complaint, she got annoyed at a colleague for working with headphones on, saying she hates having to tap him on the shoulder if she needs something. She directly told him, "Do you mind not putting on headphones while we work? I don't want to keep tapping your shoulder every time I need to talk to you, it's disrespectful to the others," or something along those lines. We just message him on MS Teams if he has headphones in, and he suggested the same to her, but she didn't want to. Then there was her complaint about a Filipino colleague bringing smelly lunches to work. I sort of understand that one. To be fair, she doesn't do it often and usually eats late, around 2 p.m., after most people are finished. A few of us dislike the smell, but no one said anything because it doesn't happen that often. We just deal with it. I also found out she criticized a few of our Asian colleagues for eating rice with a spoon instead of a fork. I can't figure out why that would bother her. She complained that our kitchen bin doesn't have a lid. None of us care much, but I can see her point there. Then there was the coffee machine. She thinks we should have one. Can't argue with that, it'd be great. She allegedly reported a female colleague for wearing stilettos, saying it was inappropriate work attire, and also reported the kitchen lady for wearing a Pikachu apron, saying it was unprofessional. I couldn't help but laugh at that one. As for Bob, he has Down syndrome, or some kind of intellectual disability. I truly don't think he means any harm or intends to be inappropriate. He probably doesn't fully grasp that touching people isn't okay. He never touched our new hire, she just saw him touch another woman and immediately flagged him as a potential sexual harasser. Sometimes my colleagues speculate whether she might be struggling with some mental health issues. Clearly, people come from different cultures with different norms, and it's been fascinating, and sometimes frustrating, to see what's normal in one place can be unacceptable in another. For instance, we've been eating at our desks for years without a problem, but now, apparently, that's out of the question for us too. Honestly, I have a genuine question. Setting aside the perfume thing, would you really complain this much in your first 3 weeks at a new job? Personally, I think sometimes you just have to accept a few small imperfections. Life isn't perfect, neither is the office. Update 3. Following most of the suggestions I'd received, I decided it was time to report the new hire to HR, along with some colleagues from my team. On Monday morning, a few of us gathered to discuss her bizarre behavior, and we agreed that the first step should be speaking with our line manager. But fate threw us a curveball. Our manager couldn't make it to work that day, for a perfectly legitimate reason. As it turned out, the new hire also called in sick and didn't show up. Not wanting to let the momentum slip, we scrapped our initial plan and went straight to HR. One of the IT guys joined us, since the new hire had bombarded him with endless, unnecessary IT requests, demanding all sorts of absurd changes to our systems. We felt he should add his voice to our concerns. The IT guy gave us a great idea. Rather than just complain about how irritating she'd been, we could approach HR as if we were genuinely concerned about her struggling to adjust to our work environment. The aim was to get HR to speak to her, supposedly for her own good, hoping she'd have a better experience working with us. So, along with a couple of my colleagues, I met with HR. To my amusement, I discovered that the HR people were already exasperated by her antics. They didn't spell it out, but they hinted that she'd been making a ridiculous number of unnecessary complaints. We suggested, only half joking, that maybe she needed to see a psychologist, speculating that some internal, personal crisis might be driving all her behavior. The IT guy asked HR whether she had shown any of these tendencies during her interview, and HR revealed she had asked several probing questions about the work culture. She even grumbled about things like parking, but at the time, they hadn't thought much of it, especially since her references gave her glowing reviews. In hindsight, those rave references probably just wanted to get rid of her. HR said they'd have a talk about the matter and planned for the HR manager to have a one-on-one talk with her the next time she came in. But that meeting never happened. The very next day, she sent in her resignation letter. Attached was an extremely long list of complaints and demands for things we should change. To top it off, she even sent that mammoth email to the big boss, claiming our workplace was unsafe, unhygienic, non-inclusive, misogynist, backward, and full of bad vibes. The HR lady confided in us that she found it almost funny the new hire never used the word toxic. One detail HR found particularly hilarious was her insistence that the workplace should provide a huge array of free stuff: bottled drinks, fruits, snacks, an espresso machine, dining vouchers, feminine hygiene products, petrol vouchers, the works. In the end, all I could think was, good riddance. Update 4. So I thought that was the end of it when she resigned, but boy was I wrong. Things got weird, really weird, over the past few weeks, and I'm honestly not sure what to make of it all. About a week after she quit, I was grabbing lunch at this little cafe near our office when I spotted her sitting alone at a corner table. She looked different. More put together than usual, but also kind of tired. I was going to just ignore her and leave, but she caught my eye and actually waved me over. Against my better judgment, I went. "Hey," she said, and I swear her whole demeanor had changed. "I owe you an apology." I sat down, completely confused. She went on to explain that she'd been going through what she called a really rough patch in her personal life. Apparently, she'd just gotten out of a toxic relationship with some guy who'd been controlling every aspect of her life: what she ate, how she dressed, even where she could work. She said the job at our company was supposed to be her fresh start, but she'd been so anxious about everything being perfect that she'd gone completely overboard trying to control her new environment. The kicker? She asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime to clear the air properly. I said maybe, just to be polite, but honestly I thought that would be the end of it. 2 days later, she texted me. Somehow she'd gotten my number from someone at work, I still don't know who. We ended up meeting for coffee, and she seemed normal. Actually pleasant. She laughed about some of the more ridiculous complaints she'd made and admitted she'd been a bit of a nightmare. We talked for almost 2 hours. Here's where it gets complicated. My girlfriend Emma has been working overseas for the past 4 months on a project, and we've been doing the long distance thing. It's been tough, and I'll admit I've been pretty lonely. The new girl, let's call her Sarah, started texting me regularly. Just friendly stuff at first, but then it became more frequent. She'd send me memes, ask about my day, even brought me lunch at work once as an apology to the whole team, though she only brought enough for me. Last Friday, she invited me to a work event at her new job. Some kind of networking thing with drinks. I probably shouldn't have gone, but I was bored and Emma had cancelled our video call because of a work emergency. The event was fine, but afterward Sarah suggested we grab a proper drink somewhere quieter. We ended up at this little wine bar, and she opened up about her ex. Apparently, he'd been emotionally abusive, always criticizing her appearance and making her feel like she had to be perfect all the time. She said talking to me had been the first time in months she'd felt like herself again. I felt bad for her, I really did, but then she started getting closer on the couch we were sharing, touching my arm when she laughed, that kind of thing. When she suggested we go back to her place to continue talking, I knew I had to leave. I made some excuse about having to get up early and took off. But here's the thing, I wanted to stay. For the first time in months, I felt like someone actually wanted to spend time with me, not just text me at scheduled times across different time zones. Sarah's been texting me more since then, and I've been responding. Emma's been so busy with her project that we barely talk anymore, and when we do, she's exhausted and distracted. Sarah, on the other hand, seems genuinely interested in everything I have to say. I know this sounds terrible, but I'm starting to think Sarah might have been right about some things at the office. Maybe we had gotten too comfortable with our little habits and routines. Maybe we needed someone to shake things up a bit. Emma's supposed to come back in 6 weeks, but her project keeps getting extended. Last night, Sarah asked if I wanted to go to this weekend market with her, and I found myself saying yes before I could think about it. I haven't done anything wrong yet, but I can feel myself walking toward a line I never thought I'd cross. The worst part? I'm not sure I want to stop. Update 5. Well, I went to the weekend market with Sarah, and I wish I could say nothing happened, but I'd be lying. The market was actually really nice, one of those trendy places with artisanal everything and overpriced coffee. Sarah seemed different again, more relaxed than I'd seen her since she started at our office. She was wearing this sundress that made her look younger, and she kept brushing her hair behind her ear when she laughed. We wandered around for hours, trying different food samples and just talking about everything except work. At one point, she bought me this little succulent plant for my desk since she felt bad about all the office changes she'd caused. When she handed it to me, our fingers touched, and neither of us pulled away immediately. That should have been my cue to leave, but instead I suggested we grab lunch. During lunch, she told me more about her ex. Turns out he'd isolated her from all her friends and family, convinced her she was too sensitive and difficult to deal with. Hearing her talk about it made me angry, not just at him, but at myself for how we'd all reacted to her at work. Maybe she really was just trying to make things better and didn't know how to communicate it properly. After lunch, we were walking back to our cars when it started raining. We ducked into this little bookstore cafe to wait it out, and somehow ended up in the poetry section, laughing at some terrible love poems. That's when she looked at me and said, "You know, you're the first person in a long time who's made me feel like I'm not completely crazy." I should have said something about Emma then. I should have created some distance. Instead, I found myself saying, "You're not crazy. We were just set in our ways." The rain didn't stop, so I offered to drive her home. Her apartment was small but cozy, completely different from what I'd expected. She'd decorated it with plants and fairy lights, and it actually felt warm and welcoming. She offered me tea while we waited for the rain to ease up. We ended up on her couch, and she showed me pictures from her previous job. Turned out she'd been well liked there, had friends, seemed genuinely happy. "That's who I used to be," she said quietly. "Before everything went wrong." I don't know if it was the intimacy of the moment or the fact that I'd been so lonely, but I found myself really looking at her. Not as the office nightmare, but as Sarah, this woman who'd been hurt and was trying to rebuild her life. When she leaned against my shoulder, I didn't move away. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Emma: "Can't talk tonight, another crisis here. Miss you." Sarah must have seen it because she sat up and said, "You should probably go. I don't want to cause any more problems." But I didn't go. Instead, I turned to look at her, and somehow we ended up kissing. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both surprised it was happening. Then she pulled back and whispered, "I've been wanting to do that since the coffee shop." I should have stopped it there. Should have said something about Emma, about how this was wrong. Instead, I kissed her again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. We didn't sleep together. I managed to pull back before it went that far. But we came close. Really close. I left around midnight, my head spinning and my phone full of increasingly worried texts from Emma, who'd apparently finished her crisis and wanted to video call. I called Emma back the next morning and lied. Said I'd fallen asleep early, that everything was fine. But hearing her voice, seeing her face on the screen, made everything feel so much more real and awful. She looked tired but happy to see me, started talking about this museum she'd visited and how she couldn't wait to take me there when she got back. That's when Sarah texted, "Thank you for yesterday. I haven't felt that happy in months." I stared at that message for a long time before deleting it without responding. But here's the thing, I keep thinking about her. About how she felt in my arms, how she looked at me like I was the only person in the world. Emma and I used to have that, but somewhere along the way, we'd become comfortable. Predictable. Sarah makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I know I'm making excuses. I know I'm probably about to destroy the best relationship I've ever had. But Sarah texted again this morning, "I got us tickets to that art exhibition downtown. The one you mentioned you wanted to see." I haven't replied yet. But I also haven't said no. Emma's project got extended again. Another 3 weeks, minimum. And I'm starting to wonder if the universe is trying to tell me something. Update 6. I went to the art exhibition with Sarah, and everything went completely sideways in ways I never could have predicted. The exhibition was at this modern gallery downtown, contemporary pieces that were honestly way above my head, but Sarah seemed to know what she was talking about. She'd studied art history in college, something I never would have guessed from our brief time working together. As we walked through the rooms, she'd point out techniques and historical contexts, and I found myself genuinely impressed by how knowledgeable she was. "You're full of surprises," I told her as we stood in front of this massive abstract painting that looked like a tornado of blues and grays. "So are you," she replied, and there was something in her voice that made me look at her more carefully. I never expected someone from that office to actually get me. We were having lunch at the gallery cafe when she dropped the first bombshell. "I need to tell you something," she said, suddenly looking nervous, "about why I really left my last job." Turns out the glowing references HR had mentioned weren't quite what they seemed. Sarah had been involved with her married boss at her previous company. When his wife found out, she'd threatened to expose everything unless Sarah left quietly. The boss had agreed to give her a good reference just to get her out of town without any drama. "I'm not proud of it," she said quietly. "But he made me feel special, and I was so lonely after my breakup." Sound familiar? The parallel wasn't lost on me. I should have been disturbed by this revelation, but instead I found myself reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "People make mistakes," I said. That's when she hit me with the second bombshell. "There's something else," she said. "About the office. About why I really acted the way I did." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. They were from her ex-boyfriend, the controlling one she'd told me about, except these weren't old messages. They were from the past month. The messages were disturbing. He'd been tracking her somehow, knew where she worked, what she was doing. He'd been sending her instructions on how to behave, threatening to expose embarrassing things about her past if she didn't comply. The constant complaints at work, the need to control everything, it had all been him, pulling strings from a distance. He said if I didn't make myself indispensable by fixing everything wrong with the office, he'd make sure everyone knew about what happened at my last job. He has photos, emails, private things. I felt sick. "Sarah, this is stalking. Harassment. You need to call the police." "I can't," she said, tears starting to form. "You don't understand what he is on me. It would ruin everything." That's when my phone rang. "Emma." I stared at it for a long moment, then declined the call. Sarah noticed. "Answer it," she said. "I don't want to be the reason you're not," I said, and I meant it. "This isn't about you. Emma and I. We've been drifting apart for months. This distance thing isn't working." But even as I said it, I knew I was lying to myself. This was absolutely about Sarah. About how she made me feel needed, important. Emma had never needed saving. She was strong, independent, successful. Sarah was vulnerable, and that vulnerability was like a drug. We left the gallery and went back to her apartment. This time, I didn't pretend it was just to wait out the weather. We both knew why we were there. We were sitting on her couch, closer than we should have been, when she showed me more of the messages from her ex. The most recent one was from that morning. "I know you're with someone today. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." "How does he know?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, looking genuinely frightened. "He always seems to know everything." That's when we heard the knock at the door. Sarah went completely white. "That's him," she whispered. "He's found me." The knocking got louder, more insistent. Then we heard a voice, "Sarah, I know you're in there. And I know you're not alone." I looked at Sarah, who was now shaking. "Stay here," I said, standing up. "I'll handle this." "No," she grabbed my arm. "You don't understand. He's not stable. He could hurt you." The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then we heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. "How does he have a key?" I asked. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, but something in her expression suggested she might. The door opened, and in walked a man I recognized immediately. It was David from HR at my old company, the one who'd left 6 months ago for a better opportunity. "Hello, Sarah," he said calmly. "And you must be the new boyfriend." I stood there, stunned. "David? What the hell is going on?" Sarah looked between us, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Not fear. Calculation. "You two know each other?" she asked, but her tone was different now. Less vulnerable, more curious. "We work together," David said, never taking his eyes off me. "Before I moved to Sarah's company." Small world, isn't it? That's when the pieces started falling into place. The glowing references, the way Sarah had known so much about our office culture before she'd even started. The timing of everything. "This isn't a coincidence," I said slowly. "Is it?" Sarah looked at David, then back at me. When she smiled, it was nothing like the vulnerable woman from the gallery. "No," she said. "It's not." And that's when I realized I'd been played by a professional. Update 7. I wish I could say I handled the revelation like a mature adult, but I didn't. I just stood there like an idiot, looking back and forth between Sarah and David while my brain tried to process what was happening. "Played?" I finally managed. "What do you mean, played?" David sat down in Sarah's armchair like he owned the place. "Oh, this is rich. She didn't tell you the best part, did she?" He looked at Sarah with what I can only describe as pride. "Tell him about the bet." Sarah's whole demeanor had changed. Gone was the vulnerable woman who'd been shaking moments before. She was calm now, almost businesslike. "David, we agreed, the bet's off," he interrupted. "He deserves to know what he's gotten himself into." I felt like I was drowning. "What bet?" David pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of what looked like a betting app. "We had a wager. Sarah bet me she could break up a happy couple within 2 months of starting at their workplace. The target was whoever seemed most stable in content." My legs felt weak. "You're lying." "Am I?" Sarah said, and her voice was completely different now. Confident. Cold. "You made it so easy. Lonely boyfriend, girlfriend conveniently overseas, and you were practically broadcasting how happy your relationship was during those first few days I was there." I sat down hard on the couch. "But your ex. The controlling relationship. The stalking." "David's not my ex," Sarah said, almost gently. "He's my boyfriend. Has been for 3 years. We work together, not just romantically, but professionally. This is what we do." "What you do?" I repeated stupidly. David leaned forward. "Corporate consulting, you could call it. Companies hire us to test their workplace dynamics, employee loyalty, that sort of thing. But sometimes we freelance for fun. And profit," Sarah added. "Do you know how much money people will pay to get dirt on their business partners? Their spouses? Their competitors?" I thought about Emma, working overseas, trusting me completely. "You were going to film us." "Already did," David said casually. "Hidden camera in the plan I gave you for your desk. Got some lovely shots of you two at the coffee shop, the market, that almost kiss at the gallery." My blood ran cold. "You can't, relax," Sarah said. "We're not monsters. The camera only activated if you brought it home. Since you left it at the office, we just have you being inappropriately friendly with a colleague. Hardly scandalous." I looked at Sarah, trying to reconcile this person with the woman I'd been falling for. "But the office complaints. You genuinely hated everything about us." "Oh, that part was real," she said with a laugh. "You guys were disgusting. Eating at your desks, that woman's overpowering perfume, the gambling ring, it was like stepping into the dark ages. I might have been playing a role, but I wasn't wrong about any of it." David stood up. "The beauty of a good con is that it's mostly true. Sarah really did just leave a job because of a workplace affair, though she was the one who initiated it. I really was her boyfriend the whole time. She really was trying to change your office culture. We just embellished the details." "But why?" I asked. "Why me?" Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Honestly? You seemed nice. Stable. The kind of guy who deserved better than what you were settling for. Don't, I said sharply. Don't pretend this was for my benefit. Wasn't it, though? David asked. When's the last time you and Emma had a real conversation? When's the last time she made you feel like you were the center of her world? I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat because he wasn't wrong. Emma and I had been drifting apart long before Sarah showed up. We'd been going through the motions, comfortable but not happy. That doesn't give you the right to. We didn't make you do anything, Sarah interrupted. Every choice was yours. Every lie to Emma, every deleted text, every moment you chose to be with me instead of calling your girlfriend, that was all you. I stood up, suddenly needing to get out of there. I need to go. Wait, Sarah said, and for a moment she sounded like the woman I'd been falling for. I know this is fucked up, but I wasn't lying about everything. The way you made me feel, the connection we had, some of that was real. I looked at her, this stranger wearing the face of someone I'd thought I was falling in love with. How would I ever know what's real with you? David answered instead. That's the thing about good actors. Sometimes they get lost in their own performance. I walked toward the door, then stopped. Are you going to tell Emma? Why would we? Sarah asked. We got what we wanted. You're about to either confess everything to her or break up with her to find yourself or whatever. Either way, mission accomplished. I turned back to look at them. David had his arm around Sarah now, and they looked like what they were, partners. A team. What happens now? Now we move on to the next job, David said. There's a law firm in Seattle that wants us to test their employee integrity. Should be fun. I left without another word. But as I reached my car, I heard Sarah call my name from the balcony. I looked up. For what it's worth, she called down, I think you're better than you think you are. Don't waste that. I drove home in a daze, my phone buzzing with texts from Emma. She tried to call twice while I was in Sarah's apartment. I stared at her messages, excited updates about her project, questions about my day, a selfie from her hotel room where she looked tired but happy. I started typing a response, then stopped. Then started again. The cursor blinked at me, waiting for me to decide who I was going to be. That's when I realized the worst part about being conned. It shows you exactly who you really are when you think no one's watching. And I didn't like what I'd seen. Emma's supposed to video call me in an hour. I still don't know what I'm going to say.